Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Tuesday evening to you all. Hope you guys are doing well out there tonight and had yourselves a wonderful day. And I hope you all have been having a great week out there so far. Thank you all for tuning in this evening as we give you guys some updated information about the storm system coming for this weekend. There's going to be a severe weather side to this, a wintry weather side to this, and a lot of people could see a lot of rain. Strong winds associated with this storm system. So we're going to feed you guys a lot of detailed information in this video, talk about what's driving this system. We're going to talk about the potential impacts and just who could see what. We're still not close enough to this to where we can really narrow down who sees the worst of the severe weather, but we can talk about who we think potentially kind of the areas that we think could see the higher chance for the worst severe weather, and the same thing with the winter weather side to this. So we're going to get very detailed with this, but of course, as we get a little bit closer to the weekend, we'll be able to talk in more specifics and really fine tune the details that I'm about to discuss in this video. We'll be pumping out 2 videos a day, most likely for the foreseeable future, just to try to give you guys some updated information. And yeah, we're going to just feed you a lot of information in these videos. If you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. Thank y'all for the growth. Welcome to any new subscribers that I picked up over the last several days. Yeah, just thank y'all for supporting somebody with a passion. I really appreciate it. And if you folks got anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put those in the comments below. It gives me an opportunity to pray over it, and it gives others an opportunity to do so too. Let's get rocking and rolling this evening. So let's take a look at the water vapor loop first, and we're going to show you this just because this does have a factor on what's to come. I think this does a really great job of showing the pattern in place right now. And if you notice, the white on your screen here on the water vapor loop indicates more moisture in the atmosphere. The duller colors, kind of like the grays and just the darker colors, that indicates more dry air in the atmosphere. And this makes sense with a high pressure right over areas of kind of the southwest, that there's drier air. Typically, when you're associated almost directly under that high pressure is a lot of dry sinking air. And on top of that is where the jet is flying across. So if you notice, all the moisture shooting across and into areas of the Pacific Northwest, gets all the way up here into Canada, then it comes screeching all the way back down, then it gets more to a west to east flow, then heads on out to the Atlantic. Then you still got the active southern jet down here, which will stay active for the foreseeable future. So you ask, Mitch, why are you showing me this? Well, you notice how all this action kind of goes all the way up into Canada. That is because there is a ridge in place over the western U.S. all the way up into Canada. The ridge boundary goes all the way up into Canada. This is building all the way up there, and it's actually shifting and will flatten out somewhat to the east. Okay, and then a storm system will kind of come into our picture here in the next couple days, and there'll be 2 main pieces of energy. One that will screech across the north, one that will dig down across the Rockies into the south central U.S. That'll be our main piece of energy, and we'll actually show you that here in a second. But this is what's going on right now. Above average temperatures will dominate most of the country here in the coming days as we have a moving pattern in place. So let's get this off your screen and let's keep rolling. So what we're going to show you first is, and you know, I don't blame you one bit if you want to skip past this, but we're going to kind of show you based off ridging and troughing the storm system and kind of the evolution of what happens here. Okay, and then we're going to talk about vortices, really show you the energy in the atmosphere, and then of course we're going to show you what this looks like on the surface as far as rain, snow, severe weather. We're going to dig deep into those impacts. So we're going to start off Thursday morning. There's that ridge I'm talking about that I just showed you on this. This, how it's kind of bulging to the north, will eventually get right into here. And you can see it pretty well as we're getting to Thursday morning here in the next couple days. The ridge is built all the way up into Canada, and it's really flexing over the middle portion of the country. This will bring above average temperatures. So we'll stop it here. The blue you see on your screen, that indicates lower pressure. Okay, the warmer colors like the yellows, the orange, the reds, that indicates high pressure. High pressure, a ridge, typically brings above average temperatures, quieter weather. Blue indicates low pressure, stormier conditions, and just more active weather, and typically associated with below average temperatures and just some kind of active weather. So what you notice here is if we move this in time, and if you're confused about the time frame, look up here. THU obviously stands for Thursday. Don't focus too much on the Zulu time. The date, December 7th. So we'll get here, moving this in here in time, that ridge shifts over into the eastern U.S. But look at this big blue blob over here over the Rockies, the Pacific Northwest. There's our energy. Okay, and we're getting into Friday morning. All right, one big area of energy. You have what we call a trough, which is associated in the blue over the western U.S. Okay, ridge all the way up into eastern Canada over the eastern U.S. Okay, and this continues to move. One little piece of energy shoots off across the high plains into areas of the upper Midwest. But the main energy starts to dig down to the western U.S., eventually digging all the way down to the south central U.S. as we get into Saturday. And then this turns into just a full-fledged cut-off trough. Okay? And, I know to a lot of people, and I understand, this just looks like a big blob of blue between two areas of orange and red. But think of this as just energy, a lot of energy in the atmosphere, and a storm system, more importantly. So this continues, this really digs down, takes on a positive, then eventually to a neutral tilt, digs all the way down into the Mississippi Valley Sunday morning, and eventually it takes on that negative tilt. Look how it's tilting that way. We'll talk more on that here in a second, okay, and what that means. And then this just fully ejects across the Appalachian Mountains, bringing a lot of high winds and just weather associated with it. So that is our energy right there. Another way to look at this is the vortices. So you notice just these more vibrant colors like the yellows, the reds, and the oranges right here on the screen. You notice there's a lot of that right over the northern Rockies and the western U.S. Okay, it's kind of quieter over this portion of the country. That's because there's a ridge in place. Okay, you keep this going, a lot of energy. You got some energy right here that we just discussed. A little piece of energy will shoot off this trough and kind of branch off into the northern stream. But this is our main player right here. Getting into Friday morning, and then this really gets its act together, consolidates. At this point, okay, this is a positive tilt. You see how it's tilting that way? That's what we call a positive tilt. Get this back off your screen and keep this rolling. And we're going to have to click up here to get this rolling again. All right, as this digs down, okay, still kind of positively tilted, it digs down right into here, and then it takes on that neutral tilt, which means it tilts kind of straight down just like that. Okay, that is a sign when it goes to a positively tilted trough to a neutrally tilted trough. That is a sign of a strengthening storm system. You get this back off your screen, and then you click up here again, and you see how it's digging like this? That tells us that more active weather is going to be further south. Okay, we won't focus too much on that, but when it digs more like this, and it just has an opportunity to really take that negative tilt, and it sure enough does as we get into Sunday evening, eventually into overnight Sunday into Monday morning. It has that full-fledged negative tilt to it where it's doing like that, and it's tilting, and that means it is a deepening low pressure. This is bringing a ton of winds with it, and we have a very strong storm system when it takes on that look. So that is why this is making so much ruckus in the weather world, and you can see it on the GFS too. Here it comes. It really likes that northern stream energy right here to be quite vigorous. This could bring some snow to the northern plains, the Dakotas. We'll see what happens with it. But here it comes. Here comes the GFS. Takes on that neutral tilt here right over areas of the mid-south, the deep south, and then it takes on that negative tilt. A little bit different of a kind of look, structure to this energy, but in general, it's the same kind of look. Okay, the models are starting to come together somewhat now. So that's what the energy looks like out there and what exactly is happening and why this looks to be such a strong system. Let's take a broad look at what this looks like precipitation-wise. Okay, we'll start off Friday afternoon. There's the northern stream energy right here that we've been talking about. It's all the way up here in Canada, right? Here comes the big dog system, though, right? A lot of snow over the Rockies. This could bring a snow event for Denver. And then here's the low pressure beginning to develop right here. Okay, and then we're getting into Saturday morning. We're getting into Saturday afternoon. Low pressure right here. You got just green showing up to the south, but I can guarantee you that's probably in the form of some sort of storm action. This is the snow on the snowy side. We're going to zoom into all of this here in a second. But this low pressure heads on off into the Great Lakes region, and then a secondary low could potentially develop over areas of the Ohio River Valley or the Mid-South. This really reamps the precipitation, and we could have severe weather southeast of this low. You see the blue lines behind this. This is cold air trailing behind this precipitation, trying to catch up with this. And if you notice that low pressure right in here, it drops to a sub 1,000 millibar low pressure. This indicates a strengthening storm system. And then it gets all the way to a 989 millibar low pressure Sunday night. You got rain switching to snow in Michigan. You even, if you look really hard enough, and we're going to get closer to this here in a second, you got rain switching to snow, even in the Appalachian Mountains. Okay, and we potentially have an ongoing nasty line of storms south of this low pressure, and then this moves off. And check out this rain switching to heavy snow for Ohio, Cleveland, like Detroit, Western PA, and then this heads on out and brings a lot of winds with it, with a 976 millibar low pressure moving into southern Ontario. You can bet a pretty penny that this is going to bring a ton of winds with this system. We look at the GFS. What does the GFS show? A very interesting setup here with the GFS. You know, Saturday afternoon has a low pressure ejecting across the Midwest, a little bit of snow, kind of a weaker low pressure. But what's interesting with this is it shows that secondary low developing somewhere in here. Okay, and as it does, the precipitation reamps. We're getting into Sunday morning, probably a lot of weather ongoing in the deep south, the southeast, the Carolinas, Georgia, and a big punch of cold air behind this Saturday afternoon. If you think, Mitch, you're rushing through this way too quick, I'm not really catching on, please stick with me. I'm going to zoom into these regions. This is just more of a broad look as far as the entire U.S. about what could potentially happen. Cold air trying to catch up with this system very quick. A wind-driven rain changes to a heavy wet snow for the Northeast, and then this heads on out as we get into our Monday. Okay, and then I'm already watching mid-month for some interesting weather. Don't want to speak on that until we get past this storm system, but there's been some changes for the mid-month time frame. We'll talk more on that here in the coming days. But as far as the severe weather, we're going to talk about impacts now. As far as the severe weather side of this, right now for Friday, day 4, says predictability too low. That could change in the coming days. We could potentially have some severe weather for Friday. But day 5 for Saturday, there's already a 15% risk of severe weather within 25 miles in a given location for this area in yellow. Includes Arkansas, areas of western Mississippi, a large chunk of Mississippi. A large chunk of Louisiana, and eastern areas of Texas, very small section of southeast Oklahoma. I wouldn't be surprised if they issue a 15% chance for Sunday by the time we're making another video tomorrow morning. I'm not going to guarantee it, but I have a sneaky suspicion they're probably going to issue a 15% risk for Sunday also. So let's talk about the ingredients. With this storm system in place, let's talk about kinematics and thermodynamics. If you're thinking, Mitch, what does that mean? Kinematics, think of that as the favorable winds aloft that support severe weather. Thermodynamics, the favorable moisture, surface temperatures, storm fuel, which is your CAPE, the lapse rates, those are your thermodynamics. So what about the kinematics? I can tell you go on and check that off, okay? Because with this deep digging, eventually closing off 500 millibar trough, closing off system, you're going to have a ton of wind energy in the atmosphere. These are winds at about the mid-levels of the atmosphere, okay? Winds about 20,000 feet up in the air are screaming. I know you're thinking, well, Mitch, what does 18,000 feet up in the air have to do with where I'm standing? Well, it has a lot to do with it because there's a lot of wind energy in the atmosphere, even if it's aloft above our heads. But even in the low levels of the atmosphere, which is about a mile above our heads, you have winds at interstate speed, most likely with this. And, we're starting to get into Saturday. We have this mid-level jet pushing 80 to 90 knots, moving across areas of Texas, the south central U.S. in general, just Arkansas, and this really begins to strengthen. We're getting into Sunday about midday. We have over 100 to 110 knot mid-level jet. A lot of winds basically in the atmosphere, moving over areas of the mid and deep south, and eventually this really escalates into a negatively tilted trough. And look at these high-end winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere moving across the mid-Atlantic to northeast as we're getting into Sunday night and a Monday morning. These will mix to the surface in the form of probably 30, 40, 50, maybe 60 mile per hour wind gusts if this evolves like this. and just brings a significant wind event, I think, for areas along the East Coast. Okay, you look at the winds in the low levels, and this is winds about 4,000 to 6,000 feet above our heads here, and this is what you call the low-level jet. Man, you got a 60, at times 70 knot low-level jet screeching across areas of Kentucky, the Appalachian Mountains. And you got to think, mountainous regions, they're higher, right? So they kind of stick out a little bit higher into these wind fields that are aloft that are just screaming at interstate speed and higher. So this is going to be a massive, if it evolves like this, low-level jet. And we're going to talk about winds at the surface here in a second. But you got winds at 60 to 70 knots. So you're thinking, what does this have to do with severe weather? Well, it provides a lot of wind shear, a lot of wind energy with these storm systems. Therefore, these storms that do form will have a lot of that wind energy. Therefore, they'll have the chance to produce damaging winds. And man, even if you don't have actually severe storms as we're getting into Sunday into Monday morning for the Northeast, look at this 70 to, guys, you basically have like 90, 95 mile per hour winds about a mile above our heads in New England if this materializes like this for Monday morning. Okay. So you look at that, and then you look at the thermodynamics. What about your dew points? What are your dew points looking like? And this is what you're looking at your screen. You start to get dew points in the 60s. That begins to be an ingredient that supports severe weather. And I mean, already getting into Friday, guys, you have dew points well into the 60s in the Texas areas of Louisiana. Okay, and then this continues to do nothing but build, because as this trough digs down, it helps to pull basically just air out the south, which is moist air from the Gulf of Mexico. So you get into Saturday afternoon of this weekend, dew points are into the 60s in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, certainly in Florida, even in areas of Arkansas where you do have a moving air mass in place. And then we get into Sunday. Tons of wind energy, a pretty good amount this time of year of moisture in the atmosphere, dew points in the 60s, all the way up into Raleigh, Richmond. And yeah, you just don't like this look. This is a ugly looking moist sector that is an ingredient for severe weather. You combine that with the Cape levels, I think they'll be the highest earlier in the storm. And as you move into Saturday, this really materializes into what we call a high shear, low Cape event, meaning there's a just ample amount of wind energy, kinetic energy in the atmosphere. But the Cape levels, not so much so high, but you don't need a lot of high-end Cape levels. I mean, if you have Cape levels 500 to 1,000 joules per kilogram, when you mix in all that wind energy, you are going to have a pretty substantial severe weather threat. And sure enough, you start to get into Sunday, not high-end Cape levels, only a few hundreds, but you know, at the end of the day, when we start to get into these short-range models, a lot of times they uptrend. So that's something we need to watch out for sure. So a little bit closer look at the evolution of what this system could look like. If you look at the European, we'll start off by Saturday morning. You already got storms ongoing across Arkansas, Mississippi. This is just the Euro, guys. It's not going to really show structured storms on this model run because it's just an operational run. It's just pivotal weather in the European trying to do its best, the best it can to kind of show you the structure of these storms, basically. But it's not going to do that great a job. One thing I want you to note, though, is as we get into Sunday evening, it looks like a lot of this convection down here across the Mid-South, Deep South evolves more into a line. And this makes sense because typically when you have such a vigorous storm system like this, it's a no-cap environment, meaning storms are going to fire at will, meaning I really favor this to be like a nasty squall line of storms, like just an intense line of storms. And there's the low pressure, another one developing over Kentucky, and you start to get into, Sunday midday that shows a nasty line of storms moving through Atlanta, the southern Appalachian Mountains. And man, look at it materializing deep down in Georgia. And trust me, guys, if you're in South Georgia, the Panhandle, Florida, southern Alabama, you're thinking, Mitch, you're not showing us. We will show you this kind of stuff when we get closer. It's just, this is going to change a lot. Okay, I'm just kind of showing you in general what this can do. And then look at the tilt of these storms that begins to shift as this trough gets negatively tilted. And look at, you stop it right here. You got a wintry mix falling in areas of Kentucky and Indiana with a nasty squall line down here in Georgia and South Carolina. Very dynamic storm system. And yeah, this could get pretty crazy, guys. It really could. And let's see and here it is. Yeah. So this is the European looking a little bit further east. And here comes these storms. And, this is getting into Sunday evening. This would not only bring a wicked line of storms through the Appalachian Mountains, the mid-Atlantic, there would be a ton of wind energy. You got a 982 millibar low pressure right over Erie, Pennsylvania, and you're just going to have an expansive, deep wind field with all these storms. This is going to produce a lot of winds Sunday night and Monday if this ends up being the timing. And then look at the winter weather coming in right behind it with cold air catching up. You got, there's a potential somebody could see storms one part of the day and turn around and see snow 12 to 15, 18 hours later. That's just how these storms are. And then this keeps going, and man, that looks absolutely scary. I'm not going to lie. Awful looking line of storms begins to move through the Delmarva, eventually reaching New York City, southern New England, probably bringing power outages. This looks crazy. It really does. And look at the snow wrapping in behind it. Okay, so we really need to watch out for this. And, the European shows the potential for high end winds with this. This is between now and I would say Tuesday morning of next week. It shows sporadic 40, 50, 60, even at times 70 mile per hour wind gusts over areas of the mid-Atlantic, even the southeast and northeast. I think this has the potential to be a high-end wind event if it evolves like the models are showing right now. And guys, it's almost Wednesday. We're getting nothing but closer, so we're kind of running out of time for this to change. I wouldn't say we're running out of time, but we're getting lower on time for this to change into a better scenario with less impactful weather. What about the snowy side of this? Okay, and we kind of mentioned the snow just a second ago. Here's the European with the first kind of low that flies through. Could bring snow for areas of Kansas, northern Missouri, Iowa. This flies through maybe a period of winter weather sometime Saturday into Sunday for, Wisconsin, northern Michigan. And then that secondary low develops right into here, somewhere into here most likely. More moisture begins to develop, and then this rain can turn to snow in the mountains of West Virginia, the central, southern Appalachian Mountains, rain changing to snow for Detroit, areas of Michigan, Indiana, and it even switches to some heavy snow as we're getting into Monday morning for, like areas of Western PA, West Virginia, Ohio, Kentucky. Okay, and then we get up into like New England, and I knew it was going to do that. I wish it would not do that for once. But, here it comes into the picture right here. Big time rainmaker Sunday night into Monday for most of the Northeast. But as this system pulls out, man, it really slams Ontario, areas of Canada with heavy, heavy wet snow. But look, rain changes to snow for Buffalo. This could be a weird system. It really could. So we need to watch the dynamics of this. But man, I think strong winds could be a serious threat for our folks here in New England. And then you look at GFS, how it evolves. It's not a whole lot different. First low moves through, a little bit of back end snow, just rain for areas of the Midwest mostly. But this first low moves in. Then here's the secondary low as we're getting into Sunday that develops and could begin to switch that rain to snow sometime Sunday for pockets in the higher elevations of the Appalachian Mountains. Look at the little bit of snow to follow behind this. And then it kind of does the same thing that the European does. Switches this from rain to snow sometime Sunday night to Monday for the interior sections of the Northeast. Potentially brings accumulating snow. So how much snow is possible with this storm system between now? We'll look all the way till next Tuesday morning. The signal is increasing, but it's really increasing for areas of the Midwest and then the upper Midwest Great Lakes region, okay? As we get about another 1 to 2 days closer to this, we'll really be able to show you guys some better snowfall totals with this, okay? But for now, the better signal is in the Great Lakes region. Then we look at the Northeast, and there is a signal here for some snow, but it looks like in the interior sections of the Northeast. So that's all I got, guys. I hope that helps. We're going to continue to fine-tune this. I think this is going to be a high-impact event. It could be kind of the storm that opens up high-end activity the rest of the month. We'll see what happens, but that's all I got. God bless all y'all. I'll have you an update in the morning. I'll talk to you soon.